All right. I am here with Daniel Madison of 4M Property Solutions. This is Jason Hull. Daniel, how you doing?
Hey, doing great. Appreciate you having me on.
Hey, the pleasure's mine. Glad to have people that are doing stuff. And what caught my attention is that you're doing the tough stuff. Are you still with me? Oh, you might need to refresh if you can hear me. I think I lost you. All right, I just restarted. Are you with me, Daniel? Huh. Daniel, looks like you froze. If you can hear me, refresh. I'll put a note here in the comments. All right, you with me?
I'm with you.
Okay, great. All right, so Daniel, with your company's called 4M?
4M Property Solutions.
Cool. So Daniel, what attracted me to you, or what I found interesting, is that you're doing some of the tough stuff that almost everybody avoids, like the scary stuff. Like for a lot of people, for some reason, it's scarier to do cold calling or cold prospecting or to interrupt people's day than to like have their business fail.
Yeah, no, no question about it. I agree with that. Hear that regularly.
So I'll see property managers struggling. They'll call me up and they'll say, I need doors. Well, then go out and get them. Like go out and do the work and get them. And they're like, well, what do I do? So tell us about how you got your first 50 doors.
Yeah, so we started back in 2013. And as I was getting started, my background was running a corporate sales team. The only thing I knew to go to market and to go to market quickly was cold calling. And so identifying who the prospect was, which was pretty simple. With today's technology world, it's easy to find homes that are for rent. And so it's just a matter of finding someone that had a home for rent. We found that through a multitude of different ways, and had a script that was ready, and understood that if they had a home that was listed, they had an immediate need, and that need was to rent the home, and they had an immediate pain, which was their phone was ringing, their email was going crazy, and they were spending a lot of time showing the property likely. And so with understanding that need and that pain, it gave us an opportunity to introduce ourselves and have an opportunity to pursue the home and to be able to be a service at that point. And so I started out day one picking up the phone off of Craigslist. By day two, I had my first house, and that's just kind of developed from there.
So how did you figure out the pain and what they want?
You know, the pain is that understanding that they have a house, that they need it rented for one reason or another. They need the revenue, they need to cover a mortgage. There is a reason that the home is being rented, and so that was pretty simple for me. It's just understanding that hey, we've got to rent this thing, and that vacancy costs a lot of money. And then number two, understanding that that we had a service. My entry point was being able to say that we did tenant placement only services. And so that kind of opened the door for me. My goal was never to really do tenant placement only, but I needed something to get in front of them with. And so I used that pain to open that door for opportunity, which allowed me to get in front of them, which at that point I could start a sales process and could start working towards actually getting the contract.
All right, so let's take a step back. So a lot of people, like I mentioned at the beginning, don't do cold calling. They don't do it. So why the hell did you decide that you were going to do that when most don't?
Well, a couple of different reasons. My background was of such that was the environment I came from. I came from a background that was a very fundamental sales background. And so I've grown up doing cold calling one way or another. The other reality of it was I didn't have a huge marketing budget. And so When you're starting out a company and you open the doors day one, you have absolutely no revenue, you have an abundance of time, and are full of a lot of ambition. The quickest, easiest way to generate revenue, in my mind, was to pick up the phone and call people to generate that revenue. And so that it is scary, and it's not something I enjoy doing per se, but I was very comfortable in that, and so that's where we got started.
Okay. So yeah, so nobody views cold calling as comfortable. So how do you get over that hurdle to do that? Or how would you recommend others do?
Yeah, you got to suck it up. It really, what you realize through cold calling is the first 5 calls are really difficult. Having a good script, understanding who your prospect is, what those pains are, what those needs are, having a script that you can utilize with a carrot, so to speak, to dangle out there to be able to open the door for opportunity, and then having a good sales process once you get in front of them, so that you're not wasting their time or your time, and so that you can have the best opportunity of closing that business.
Right. Okay. So what is this script that you've been testing out? Give us an example. Like how does the call typically go?
Yeah, we're finding a for rent by owner, calling on a for rent by owner. Let me pull up a script here real quick. I sent you over a script as well that you're welcome to share with your audience if you desire to do so.
Okay, cool. We
but
can
it's
plug
simply,
that in on the show notes.
Yeah. So it's simply calling them, introducing who we are. Hey, this is Daniel Madison. I'm with 4M Property Solutions. I'm calling about your home that you have for rent at 123 Main Street. Was just calling to see if you're the property owner or the property manager for that property. We get a lot of ads that are in our marketplace that are not posted properly. And as a result of that, we get a lot of real estate agents, a lot of property managers who are posting and just not listing themselves on the ad. And so once we identify that they are a property owner, then what we're doing is we're asking some simple questions. And those questions we'll start out with is, have you been able to rent the home yet? Are you willing to consider a service? And so nothing fancy, nothing over the top. We're not spending tons of time creating these scripts. It's just really conversational. The key that I find in cold calling is that you got to pick up the phone and you got to dial and you got to do the numbers. And if you don't do that, then you're not going to get results. I don't care how good or how bad your script is. At the end of the day, if you don't make the calls, then you're not going to get results.
Yeah, I find with doing sales, the more you just do it, the better you get at it. The better you get at uncovering people's pain, the better you get at asking the right questions, the better you know your target audience. So can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm hearing you great.
Oh, okay. I didn't see my little bar at the bottom here, but yeah, the better you get at all of this. And so you just have to do it, right? Just like Daniel says, you just have to do it, suck it up. And something I like to tell my kids, I tell my coaching clients, I say we all start at the level of suck. And that's where everybody begins. And so if you're not willing to suck or suck it up and just do it, you're not going to get to the gold. You're not going to get beyond that stage where it feels incredibly awkward and strange and whatever. So the other thing that I've noticed about cold calling or doing sales, you just have to be willing to interrupt people. That's what selling and doing that is all about. And a lot of people, that's kind of the scariest thing. They're afraid to interrupt people. How have you kind of gotten over that mindset?
That it's not something that you can think about. I mean, business hours are business hours, and people get calls all day long with today's technology. You're going to accept the call, you're not going to accept the call, and we're all busy. We're all doing a gazillion different things during the day, and it's just not something that we give a lot of thought to. We don't want to be disrespectful of anyone's time, but the reality of it is that you have a home on the market, you're getting a bunch of calls. I'm just one of several that you're getting here in the next 10 to 15 minutes because your home's listed.
Right. And so they're already getting calls. They're already getting calls from a bunch of terrible prospects. And something else that was pointed out to me by one of my clients is that one of the number one targets for scammers are houses with really terrible looking DIY, like for rent signs, these for rent by owners. And so you're also providing, I think, some real value as a property manager, and you're helping protect them from falling prey to some of these scammers and whatnot. So, so how do you find your leads? Where do you get these leads?
You've got to find a source, and that's maybe the biggest challenge in cold calling. No one wants to do the cold calling, but really the challenge is not the cold calls, it's getting the source of information. And so we started off with Craigslist. We've used Zillow and Trulia. We've used tax records to see which are primary and non-primary homes. And it takes a little bit of research. It takes a little bit of time to dig through some of those things. We've also used off-market listings. So as a listing's coming off the market for sale, calling those folks and giving them another option as opposed to selling their house. We don't do any real estate sales. We only do single family property management. And so we are calling them with an opportunity to maybe solve a problem by not selling their house and giving them another option. So again, finding a list is key. That's really the biggest challenge is having good lists. There's a lot of ways online that you can do that as well. And then from there, it's just a matter of picking up the phone.
Cool. I actually got in touch with a company called pmleads.com several months ago and was talking with them about their service. And so they actually have FRBO, for rent by owner leads, that you can subscribe to their service. And if you want to get a discount, they set up a special landing page for me. So if you go to pmleads.com/DoorGrow, you can start a free trial and try it out for like 2 weeks. And then you get, I think it's like 25% off what their normal pricing is. If you start with my URL, it'll redirect right back to PM Leads, I've noticed, but it has our logo and stuff at the top, like it stores it via a cookie or something. So, but you'll get a discount, and I guess they data mine Craigslist and several other channels in each rental market, and they add markets. So you subscribe by market. And so it looks like a really cool service. So I recommend everybody check that out as a source to get leads. It's probably a little bit easier than doing your own data mining through Craigslist. If it saves you an hour, it's probably worth it, hands down. So, so check that out. So before you can sell, you need to know what their challenges are, you mentioned, and you need to know what they want. It's pain and pleasure, right, in sales. And so I've found that just asking questions can be really effective. So I'm going to share some of my ideas I came up with. Are you ready for this?
Ready, man.
All right. Tell me what you think. I want your feedback. So I think starting out, it's great to just be upfront with who you are. That disarms them, especially if you're going to start asking questions. So, hey, this is so-and-so with such and such property management. And then, is the property still available? And I got this idea from John Zeppeleus, one of my clients, the other day. He mentioned just asking, is the property still available? And if they, and saying, I may have a tenant, and if for you, would you be willing to pay a referral fee? Just asking them that sort of question. If I bring you a tenant. And if they say, yeah, I'd consider it, and then he would bring up, get into property management or talk about what he does. So, but then what he said, what I would do is, what if I typically I'd charge this amount to place a tenant, but what if I gave you the tenant for free if you did a management contract with me? And let me tell you about management, right? So I thought that was a pretty clever sort of idea. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, no, I like the spin that he's done on that. And so nicely done. That's very similar to the kind of language we use when talking with folks. We approach them with, we've got tenants, we've got the ability to rent your home quickly. And then on the backside, I really like that, the management spin on it.
Cool. So another idea is when first you want to qualify a potential prospect. And so you want to find out like where they're at. So it's great to know in general what people's challenges and whatnot are, but you want to find out their specific challenge. So I like how you had mentioned asking if the property is vacant, and I would ask how long has it been vacant, because the longer it's been vacant, the bigger their pain, right? The more nervous they are. So if you hear, oh wow, it's been vacant for 3 weeks, oh wow, that's almost 4 weeks. That's like a year of our management fees. We could have, had to rent it out and been taking care of the whole thing for you for an entire year. So I think qualifying upfront helps you know how to sell. Another great question I saw on some real estate scripts where they do for sale by owners or target FRBOs to convince them to do real estate and list the home with them, is to ask, did you buy the home as an investment property, or did it end up as one through circumstance? And then after that, to ask, do you have any other rental properties? One cool idea I got from Steve Murray of Real Trends is he had mentioned that if you have four rentals or more, you typically are tapped out, like as a real estate investor, and that's generally when they need property management. And so that's another great way of qualifying them. The more properties they have, the more hassle and difficulty they have in keeping the management going, and the more they would probably want or need your services. And after about 4, I think it's pretty much inevitable they're going to use a property manager. What do you think of that idea?
No, I agree. I've heard those same stats, and we see a little bit of both of that. Sometimes we get the folks that have 4 to 10. They think because they've been able to do more than the average that they know it all, and so it's a matter of cracking through that code and helping them understand what they don't understand. And then for the folks with onesies and twosies, a lot of times they know that they don't know quite yet what's going on, and so sometimes they're a little bit easier. So I do agree that as you get more, certainly it gets more difficult. There's more opportunity, and obviously there's more return for us as well. But most investors understand that. We've actually had more success with the 1s and 2s than we had the larger portfolios through our cold calling aspects. However, when we get into those multiples, we usually ask them, just allow us to take 1 or 2 of your properties and prove ourselves, and let us show you what the difference is that we can bring to the table. And if we do a good job for you, then obviously we'd like the opportunity to earn your business with the others. That builds trust. It shows that you're willing to put your best foot forward and to work in order to earn the business, that you're not just expecting them to hand it over all to you.
Yeah, I love it. I think a fantastic principle is to be helpful. Give value first. You give value first, it lowers that trust, barrier or hurdle that you need to jump over. It also opens them up to believing that you have some intention to benefit them, not just yourself. So I love that. Give value first. So in that line, have you ever thought about offering, some sort of value to come out and meet with them and see the property, like a free rental analysis or a rent-ready inspection to help them get more rent?
Yeah, absolutely. We use that. I want to get to the property. We don't take every property we look at. When you're doing this type of prospecting, you've already narrowed down your search, and so you've already flushed out a lot of the crap that you're going to see, and so you're kind of already into a sweet spot. But even being in that sweet spot, you don't know if the owner is at a place that you want to work with them. You don't know if the property's in the right condition. Pictures can be deceiving. And so getting there is super important to both understand the owner's goals and objectives, and to see if their philosophies match with our management, as well as understanding the property and whether the property has value as well. And so we want to get there. Our hook there is tenant placement services is what usually opens the door. When we get there, we use a sales process that starts with asking the best questions and providing a rental analysis as part of that. And so we take a full rental analysis that we've prepared prior to that to them, and start with a lot of questions before we even present that to them. to help understand the property and its real value.
Yeah, great. I love it. So first you find the leads, then you call them up. You need to be curious, be helpful. Now, what's your number one goal when you cold call somebody during that phone call? What's the main outcome? Is it to get a time set to go see the property?
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to set an appointment. And so on a good day, good week, our numbers, if we're cold calling, if I can get 4 appointments a week out of our cold calls, that's what I'm looking for. I know 4 appointments a week will produce 1.5 houses a week by doing that. There's going to be some people that cancel before the appointment. There's going to be some houses that aren't a good fit or owners that are not a good fit. We're going to get a no, and then we're going to win business there as well. And so we understand that if we get 4 appointments a week off of our cold calling activities, that we're going to net 1 to 1.5 properties per week through that effort.
All right, so let's
got to track your numbers.
So let's work this backwards with the numbers. So if you want to close a door or so a week, you're saying you need to have probably about 4 appointments?
That's correct.
And if you have 4 appointments, how many cold calls do you need to connect with or make in order to get those 4 typically?
We're seeing about 60 calls in a week to get those 4 appointments. It's about the average to get that. Now, some of those calls are regurgitated from the week before where you didn't reach somebody. Some of those are new listings. And so there's a combination of where those calls come from. But to consistently see that effort, a few years ago, we were seeing a much higher turn rate. We were getting 60%, 65% response rates to our cold calls. Today, that number is much, much lower than what we experienced a few years ago. But nonetheless, it's still an effective means, and understanding those numbers is going to help you get to whatever your goal is there.
And that doesn't sound too crazy. So when people hear 60, they're like, whoa, but for 4, but that's only, what, 10 phone calls a business day, roughly?
Yeah, if you break it down to a daily basis, we usually break it down to 2 or 3 days a week and make 20 calls in a day or so.
Okay.
You can make 20 quality calls in a 2-hour time block, and that's not too bad. Get a cold drink and sit down and put a headset on and just kind of bust through them.
So yeah, I love it. Chunk out some time, have your call list. You can crank through them pretty quickly, and just do it. Just get into it. As soon as after you make that first phone call, I'm sure it gets a little bit easier on each one.
Yeah, no question. It takes usually about 5 or 6 to kind of get into the groove. And once you get 5 or 6 behind you, usually by the time you're at 10, 12, you're kind of grooving at that point. And really focused on what your objective is and getting your goal for that day. And so it really helps you along. We do some fun stuff in the office. We've got a bell that we ring on appointments and some different stuff that we do just to make some fun of it.
Cool. So when you go out to the appointment, and this is my recommendation, is those listening, make sure your goal is to find the win-win, or when you're on the phone, find the win-win. So, what if we both could win and help each other out? I help real estate investors win without the headache of being a landlord, right? This kind of a thing. So figure out what they want, help them win. So, and then the other tactic in sales that I think is critical, Grant Cardone said this is like his number one sales secret, is follow up, right? Just keep following up. So what's your follow-up process like with these cold leads that you're calling?
Yeah, we maintain contact, and we'll follow that lead if we're not getting a hold of them several times a week for several weeks before we end up flushing it out. We maintain a database of that, though, because if they had a house that was available in May, there's a good likelihood they'll have a house that will be coming available in May again next year. Mm-hmm. And so those lists compound themselves, and you can go back to them and really get some good information from them as a result of that. But our process is pretty simple. We started off by just using spreadsheets. We've gone to using some different database systems now with some workflows and some different things that we can utilize with that as well.
Yeah, I highly recommend property managers leverage a CRM to keep track of their leads and prospects. So there's some great CRMs out there, which stands for customer relationship or contact relationship management. So So yeah, a good CRM can really help you keep track of your deals and leads. Especially, I love the ones that have like Kanban or Kanban, however you say it, pipeline, stages, stuff like that you can pull through and set your stages up. So Base is a great CRM if you're doing a lot of cold calling. It has phone stuff built into it. Contactually is a really great CRM for helping you initiate follow-up. And here's a really cool tactic. So here's another idea. Let me know what you think of this idea.
All right.
So I heard this from a guy named Travis at Lighthouse Property Management. He's near Atlanta. And Travis told me that he had this idea, and I thought this was a cool idea. So this idea is to keep track of A-grade tenants. So when you do tenant screening, you don't place them all, right? And so he said, keep track of them in a CRM. And when you get this A-grade tenant that has great credit, they look amazing, they've got a job, all the stuff, they look nice, whatever the qualifications are, you consider an A-grade tenant. Keep track of them in the CRM. You can't place them. They're probably maybe looking for a property a year from that time, roughly, because they're going to find went with some other place. You talk to them, they're like, oh, we got into another place, another management company, or for rent by owner or whatever. So no problem. I'll follow up with you in a year and see how you like your place still and see if you're ready to upgrade. Oh, okay. So you keep them in your CRM, and then you can drip out stuff, or you can just call them, but you've got this list eventually built up of all these great tenants. And when you follow up, you're going to then have a list eventually of tenants that are looking again or open to looking for another property because you've emailed them and asked them, and they said, yeah, we're looking for a new place. Obviously, this would take time, but if you have this list every month of A-grade tenants that are coming due, that are ready to look for a new place or interested in a better or newer property, then how powerful would it be to cold call somebody that has no tenants and say, hey, I've got 3 or 4 A-grade tenants that are looking for properties right now that meet your specs, right after you ask them the specs on the property. What do you think of that idea?
No, I think it's great. And there's a lot of technology today to be able to compile those lists. And it is one of the hooks that we use when we're talking with owners. They usually want to know, do you have anybody that's interested in my property right now? And so being able to go back to them and go, yeah, we've got several hundred people that are being fed properties that are active in the marketplace today, or we have 8 A-grade that already meet your criteria that are looking for a property in that general area. Allows you, again, to get a foot in the door. And all you're looking for, in my viewpoint, is to get a foot in the door.
Right.
Because you can't do much on the phone. You got to get in front of them, and you've got to develop a relationship, and you got to provide value to them. And so by getting your foot in the door, you can start that process with doing so. But I love that. I think that having good lists, knowing what your numbers are on those lists, being able to have those top of mind so that when you're talking to folks, they realize the value of what you do. I was told very early on when I first started doing this, I was talking to a friend, and I said, man, these owners know as much as I do. I'm brand new into this business, and here I am cold calling them. And he says, you have to remember that you see more in 1 month than any owner will see in their whole time of owning property. And so that really changed my perspective when I was cold calling early on. And it really made an attitude difference as I started getting a few properties under my belt and talking with folks.
That's a fantastic mindset shift or perspective for property managers starting out. A lot of them, there's always this voice in anything that we do as a business owner or in any role. We think, who am I to do this? How am I qualified? Am I, good enough to do this? And so that's a great point, that property managers, even if you're just starting out, in a single month, you're going to see more action than a owner of a property, typically of one property, would see in an entire year, maybe several years. Love it. So, all right. So this is, I think, a really valuable question to people. So many are afraid of the no's, getting told no, because cold calling, you're going to hear probably a lot of no's, or I'm not interested, or whatever. So what benefits have you noticed or changes in yourself in being, in experiencing these no's in terms of resiliency or any other benefits?
Yeah, the getting a no really helps you polish what you're doing. When you get no after no after no, it does a couple of things. It builds your stamina in what you're doing, first and foremost. And secondly, it allows you to polish your skills. And so by being engaged with cold calling, you get to be intimate with the owners and landlords that are in the marketplace. You get to hear what's going on with them. You're going to inadvertently be engaging with other management companies and agents as well that are listed there. And you get an intimate knowledge that you really can't gain in any other way fairly quickly. And so for me, what I find is the no's, it really gives me an opportunity to polish my skills. It allows me to, when I'm in front of a potential client, to really come across with a lot of information that's relative of both what's actively going on as well as what my knowledge base is. And so, I know is certainly a part of it, but it's not something that gets us really off track with what we're doing. We just realize that's a part of cold calling.
Yeah, I love it. I think kind of what you're describing is this process, almost like making, forging iron or making a sword. It's these pounding and this pressure and this difficulty and resistance that you're getting makes you stronger and better at what you're doing. And if you're not challenged in sales, you're not going to get better at sales. And so a lot of property managers aren't even really selling. They're just taking word of mouth leads business, and they're just answering questions and then trying to get signatures, right? And so I think it makes you a better seller. Like people that are really great at sales, how did they learn? Just by doing it, right? By being told no. So Ray Hespin of Property Meld, who we've had on the show before, he's got a question here. He says, Daniel, I heard that cold calling success has a direct correlation of attitude towards cold calling. So how do you get your team to have the right attitude?
Yeah, it's about building fun into the successes because it is hard, and especially for me, I didn't have a choice. It was survival for me. And so I had to get on it and I had to make it happen regardless of what the no's were. But when you got a team, you're training a team and working with a team, they don't see that in the same way that you see it. And so you've got to build incentives. You got to build fun into that atmosphere. I find that 20-minute blocks of time or good blocks of time, take a drink break, talk about what's going on, celebrate the victories. Again, we use a bell to celebrate victories in the office. So anytime you hear a bell go off, something good happened. And so by celebrating those appointments and then also keeping them engaged. A lot of times when folks are cold calling for you, then you're out there, you're getting deals done, and it's exciting to you, but you sometimes forget to let them know what that end result was. And so by letting them know and participate in that, then they have a much better buy-in. Their attitude seems to change a little bit. And we like to track. I've got somebody that calls for me today, and honestly, he's a much better cold caller than I've ever been. That's just straight on the phone. And but he enjoys the success. He likes knowing not just that he got an appointment, but he likes to know what happened through that appointment and what the end result was for our company as a result of that. So there's a sense of ownership through that, and through that ownership, that builds pride in what they're doing, and the attitude tends to change.
Right. So they want if to engage them, they need to know that there's some wins happening, right? Celebrate the wins,
Right.
Make sure that there's some closes. I think as business owners, that's great advice because a lot of us don't celebrate the wins. We're so focused on all the challenges and difficulties. And when there are successes or wins, we really need to take time to celebrate it. And we're often more willing to do it for our team than for ourselves. But that's some great advice that I got from some coaches and mentors, is to make sure and celebrate those wins. So I've got another idea. I want to share some power phrases. Okay. You ready for this?
Go for it.
All right. So these are some power phrases that help, I think, with the cold calling conversation, or could. So one of the phrases that I like to use when I'm on my cold or first initial call, because I call any first initial call a cold call. because there's no relationship there. It's not warm. Some people think it means just calling somebody else and interrupting them. If they call me, that's still a cold call in my universe. So one of the phrases that I like to use is most of my clients. So you can say, oh, well, most of my clients start with, a property manager for these reasons, or they came to us for this. What's your situation like? So this phrase, most of our clients, says, one, that you have clients, and it's kind of this bandwagon mindset. They want to be like these people. And so another phrase is, I find the most savvy investors, this is a phrase you could use, or the most savvy, I would say the most savvy property managers have done this. From my experience, this is what the most savvy investors do. They get this property, they get another property, they do this, whatever. So you can, because they want to be savvy, right? It's a positive thing. So that's another power phrase. Another power phrase I wrote down before our show is, I talked with a guy a week ago that da-da-da-da-da, or before that did this, and share stories, horror stories and success stories when you're talking with people on the phone. People love stories because you can say, we're going to do this for your property, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that and this, but it's so linear and methodical, people can't really grasp it sometimes. And so I find stories to be really powerful. So I love sharing stories or experiences or things that I've heard from other property managers, or stories of different clients that I've had that are good or bad. And it's very powerful to share a story. Another power phrase or idea I had is, I helped an owner in your exact situation just the other day. And then what you're doing is you're doing what's called future pacing. You can say, well, this is what we did for this other guy that was in your same situation. And you're painting this picture, this possible future for them of success that you've already done. All right. What do you think of those ideas?
No, I think they're great. The biggest thing with cold calling is being able to relate, to be able to have a conversation. And so any of those power phrases that helps you relate to them is going to get that conversation going. And so once you got the conversation going, everything else kind of flows. Everybody's scared to pick up the phone. Everybody's scared to make that call, but no one's scared to have a conversation traditionally. And so it's just a matter of breaking the ice to get to that conversation. So some of those power phrases work really well with the ability to break into that and start that conversation. I find that, like many sales items, once you get someone talking, then you do a lot of listening, you do a lot of question asking, and they walk away from the conversation with a very positive viewpoint of who you are and what you do doing so. And again, the more they talk, the closer I know I'm getting to an appointment, or the more I realize that they're not a good fit for me and I don't want the appointment anyway. And so it's time to move on.
Right. Cool. So have you ever used the tactic of mentioning the liability, kind of showcasing some of the fear? Because one of the questions that I got from somebody was about, how do you convince these DIY landlords that they need it when they say, well, I've rented it out several times and it's never really been too difficult?
Yeah, this new HUD ruling that has come out that we learned through NARPM back in Vegas we've used it a lot. People just don't know what it is. They don't understand it. It's very, very scary.
So the new HUD laws and fair housing, stuff like that.
Correct. Yeah. And so we'll kind of sting them a little bit with, are you aware of the new ruling, or have you heard about? And most folks realize that they haven't heard about, and then it's a scary process. And the scareder they get, the more they want to talk to you, and the better of a resource you can become in doing that. And so I don't like a scare tactic per se, but I like to educate folks, and I want them to be educated. And so, and I want people to operate in a marketplace and operate in a high standard and a high professional level. And so by having those conversations is not necessarily, from my viewpoint, a means of scaring them, but more into educating them and making sure that they're operating in a way that lends itself to success for them And traditionally, it will open a door because we become resourceful at that point.
All right. So here's a phrase then that I came up with. You could be saying this to them on the phone, something like this maybe. Sure, you could do it yourself. Most of my clients were like you, doing it on their own before. They just got tired of finding and screening tenants and showing the property and handling maintenance issues and dealing with evictions, you know, et cetera. And with the recent HUD and fair housing laws, comfort animals, scammers, all this stuff going on, most of my clients are glad to avoid the potential lawsuits, criminals, et cetera, and that are targeting DIY landlords.
Yeah, and we'll use that in a we'll kind of scale that down a little bit, and we'll use that in a phrase that we'll come back to them and say, you know, based on some of the challenges that we've seen in the marketplace, those new rulings, we find that it's becoming too much of a liability for individuals to maintain this on their own. And so most people that own a home are somewhat conscious of liability. And so they want to understand, how do I minimize that risk as we start to talk about liabilities? And so usually their ears perk up a little bit, and you can start down that road with them and start that education process.
Yeah, fantastic. Another idea that I came up with that I think would be useful is having some sort of lead magnet. Hey, could I send you an email with the top 6 landlord tenant laws that most landlords are failing to, you know, stay on top of or enact or practice, something like that. And they'd say, yeah. And then you can showcase some of the liability that they're maybe not aware of.
No, excellent idea. A lot of times when we can't get an appointment on the phone, we're getting shut down, we're getting that no. That no for us is an opportunity to capture information. And so we'll ask them, can we send out some information to you about how to better your property as a do-it-yourself landlord? And so we kind of tell them that, hey, it's okay, do it yourself, that's cool, but let us give you some information, some free education pieces. And if we can ever be a resource, we hope that you'll fall back on us as a resource for doing so. We just finished a video series. It's an 8-part series that we're using in conjunction with that as a means of touching those people more and having an opportunity to get back in front of them. And when we get back in front of them, it's a little warmer than that first call with it. And so we'll tell you in a year how that's worked out.
Yeah, I love it. So the 8 video series, what are the videos about?
Videos are anything from what is make ready, how to select the best tenants, why a property manager, and then just all the general list of what goes on there. But what that does is it helps them understand, this is what my house needs to look like to be ready to rent. These are the things I need to be thinking about, looking at when I'm talking to tenants. These are the type of resources I need in my marketplace in case I hit a snag. And so it just kind of goes through all that. The very last one is about why property management, and of course is a complete self-promotion for us and the reason why we need to be their choice.
Fantastic. Love it. This has been some really great advice, great ideas. And for those out there that are looking to get started with cold calling, how do they start? What's the very
Yeah, I
first
think
step?
For me, you need to find a list, whether that's Craigslist, Zillow, whether it's the vendor that you spoke about earlier. You've got to find a list. And so you've got to find the opportunities. And you do need a list. You don't need just 1 or 2. You need as many as you can compile in order to start making those calls. Develop a simple script. It doesn't have to be fancy. Think about what those normal objections are that you're going to get and have a response for those. It's just like a movie that you watch. They work off of scripts, but you never know it when you watch a movie. Your phone script is the same way. You know it's a script, but you get to the point where it just flows naturally with it. And so have a script, and then understand your market. And if you're in property management, you're just getting started, then you understand the basics of what that market is. And so you can go to market with that. But then make sure that when you get in front of them that you're fully prepared. Have a good process. Be of value, ask good questions. It's not all about just getting another house. For us, it's about building a relationship, making sure that it's a good match, a good fit, and then getting the business from there.
Love it. So this doesn't have to be something incredibly sophisticated. They don't need to analyze over this too much. Get a list, start making some phone calls, put together a quick and dirty script, make a list, and just start making the phone calls. Really, really simple. So Daniel, I love the ideas. Appreciate you coming out. How can people find you?
Yeah, best way to reach me, phone 864-640-8877. Email is daniel@4m-propertysolutions.com. That's the number 4, the letter M like management, -propertysolutions.com. Would love to connect with you guys.
Perfect. Daniel, thanks for coming on the DoorGrow Show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.